We're a couple of minutes late, thanks, Alf. I was eating fruit. I was just contributing to my 5+ a day. Okay, so next up is the Auckland Transport Q4 performance report. Claire's going to lead off, and I think Dean's here to answer any questions. Hello, Claire.
Tēnā koutou katoa. So this report is AT's fourth quarter performance report through to June the 30th, 2024, and it considers the key issues and risks that have been highlighted in the report. As the Chair has mentioned, Dean is here today to answer any questions. Look, positively, Auckland Transport's performance has improved against the performance measure targets specified in the SOI. This includes improvement in public transport, punctuality, public transport passenger boardings, customer satisfaction with passenger transport, and deaths and serious injuries. AT has met or exceeded 18 of its 19 performance targets, and to put that into context, last year, which was a year where we had multiple weather events and post-COVID, AT in that year met 13 of its performance measures or exceeded 13 of them, and 16 were below target. So it does show a demonstrated improvement from last year. They are completed or are on track to complete 66 of the 72 deliverables for this period, and they've delivered 99% of their capital budget. There are a number of highlights mentioned in the fourth quarter report, and I'm sure that Dean will elaborate on those shortly. The one SOI measure target that was not met relates to trust and confidence of customers and communities, with the result of 29% against a 30% target. And this is an area, of course, that the Council and AT are very focused on. Under the Local Government Act, Auckland Transport is also required to report against an additional 5 measures required by the Department of Internal Affairs. And 4 of these measures are also that they're required to report on are in the Council's long-term plan. Just to note, one of these measures does have 2 targets, and that's why the reporting, there's a footnote in the report that outlines that. So in total, AT has exceeded or met targets for 6 out of 9 of these measures. The additional targets that were not met relate to road maintenance standards, the condition of road assets, and pedestrian delays at signalised intersections. And as we've noted in the report, there was no commentary provided on this, and we have recommended that AT provide some update on that to this committee. So excluding depreciation, the net operating surplus is 40 million, which is 33 million favourable to budget, and that's mainly due to the strong bus patronage, additional NZTA funding for extreme weather remediation costs and cost savings across the business. So that's just an outline of the fourth quarterly report and some of the key facts and figures. Thank you. Happy.
Wrong button. Thank you, Claire. Yep, Dean, come on up. Welcome. And Mark. See you.
And good afternoon, councillors. It's great to be here. Just picking up on where Claire left off. Sorry, that didn't come out right, did it? Where Claire left off. I think Auckland Transport's got a lot to be proud of. You don't lift performance from last year to this year without a huge amount of effort from the team, and you don't get there without the support that we've had through funding from you as a council. So can I acknowledge that just that combined emphasis and the accountability that comes with public funding and the expectations of Aucklanders we've deeply taken on board. Interestingly enough, as I look across it, in terms of performance against capital budget, we're consistently one of the highest performing capital delivery agencies in New Zealand. We don't understand that. We as well, or celebrate that as much as maybe what we could. The other question that always follows on that, well, you might be spending the money, but are you delivering the value? And we also test that. We don't have a quantitative measure for it yet. We've committed to do that in this year's SOI, but we will have one The qualitative assessment, though, for I would say 70 to 80% of our delivery program, we are absolutely on program and scope and cost. The 20% is the smaller projects, which are very hard to measure against. But we will develop a measure that's consistent across the council family to demonstrate value for money. Auckland Transport is also using the highest number of electric buses in its fleet of any Australasian city. So our commitment to emissions reduction, our commitment to decarbonising remains an important part of what we do. We lifted patronage significantly and we've got strong targets ahead. You asked us to improve maintenance across our roads so that we had better outcomes for the users of those roads and protect the asset investment we'd originally made. And we have delivered on that, if not slightly ahead of what we committed to. So there's a lot of good news in that report. 18 of the 19 objectives. The one that we are disappointed in, and quite rightly so, as a U, is we missed out on trust and confidence. We had a score of 29 against 30, 1%. Still not good enough, because I want 30 to be higher. Sadly, it went further back over the month of July to 26. So we know that we've got work to do, and we understand where some of those pressures are on our reputation, trust and confidence. We are focused on those. Some we directly control and some we influence, but we will unpack that and we will keep you across it, okay? I am more than happy to take questions on the report, and I'm sure that you've got some. I've also got Mark here to join me. I don't know everything about everything, so when it comes to things like some of the finances and investment elements, between Mark and I, we will cover that off. But I do have a favour beforehand. I've got a picture I'd like to put up because Stacey Vanderputten gives her apologies, and I'll give you the reason why. There you have, she's down at the port. And there we have today arriving some of our new carriages for City Rail Link. And I thought this is an awesome photo, not of only Stacey. It does make that carriage look very small, but our carriages are now... yes, I understand that you were gifted a bus as well, but I think your train's bigger than your bus. Okay, well, it's all a matter of perspective. Sorry, that was a total distraction, but what a great celebration, okay? And I'm pleased that we're able to share that. Stacey gives her apologies, good reasons for doing so. More than happy to take questions across anything on that quarterly report.
Thank you, Dean. Ken.
Thank you. I just wanted to go back to this financial performance, and I was just reading on page 66 that direct revenue 23 million, favourable to budget, blah blah blah, and it was about New Zealand transport funding, and it said here operating funding for extreme weather remediation costs and higher PT patronage. We've got this problem in our road corridor where we've got these repairs where people are in no man's land, where we're looking for Auckland Transport says they've got no funding to help in this area, and yet we've got some excesses here which are favourable to budget. I had it written down there. 33 million overall, that 23 million I just spoke about. Why can't how much of that is being delivered to the extreme weather recovery remediation, and where is it being delivered to?
Some of those numbers got quite confusing, so we're trying to stand back from what was the government substantially funded the flood recovery. Some of it was OPEX, some of it was CAPEX. So how it shows up from a funding line kind of distorts the P&L slightly. But I guess if you stand right back, the flood recovery, we're actually ahead of where we thought would be. We're actually going to pull as much as we can forward into this year because it was supposed to take another sort of 18, 24 months. We think we can actually substantially complete the rest of that work in the coming 12 months. And the money is sitting there essentially, and Crown Infrastructure Partners wants to get it out the door as fast as they can. So as fast as we can remediate, we'll access that government funding.
So if I'm right, when we had that first recovery and the deal was all set up, there was 143 million by memory that was specifically ear tagged for Auckland Transport over and above the other monies for your recovery issues. Is this 23 million talked about here, or whatever part of it relates to the remediation, extreme weather remediation? Is that in excess of that money or part of that money?
I'd say it's more of it's part of that money, it's timing difference. We spent more of it quicker than we thought.
So again, I go back to the 84 people that I know of that Auckland Transport has in their numbers that are locked in this limbo of the side on that no man's land in the road reserve. We've asked questions in meetings about being able to not have to pay for their applications to work in that area, not have to pay for their design work and all that sort of stuff. Are we able to satisfy that in some way? Where are we going? Where's that money where's it going if it's not going to those people?
This is the one time that I would have loved Murray Burt to be here to answer those questions. I'm sorry, I can't. Murray's not here because you've got a very important Central City Advisory Group meeting right now. So I said, Murray, go to that, and if there are detailed questions that you can answer, we would come back to you. So look, Councillor, I don't have the answer on that. I could provide you a principled one, but I don't think that's going to be helpful. Can we come back to you on that? And we would join up with the council response, because we've been working together to ensure that you understand how we are supporting people that are caught in limbo and how we are getting back to them as fast as we can to create certainty.
Yeah, that would be very.
I just don't have the answer.
That would be very good, thank you, because I'm trying to develop a notice of motion to help us. None of these people have got a firm stick in the mud. It's 18 months in, and it's all still pretty wishy-washy, including, let's talk about it offline. So I'm really looking forward to firming this up. Thank you.
Thanks, Ken. Alf?
Chair, I will second if you're moving to receive this report.
It's a very good idea. Let's do that.
Thank you. And my question is, you mentioned 29 of 30. Just clarify the 29, 31% you mentioned. What is that indication?
Thank you for that. So we have we survey confidence of Aucklanders using the transport system. It's a trust and confidence measure, and it relates to do we listen and understand. And our target for last year was 30%. Now, what does 30% mean? 30% means that 30% of all respondents score us 8 out of 10 or higher. And if I've got that wrong, Kirstine Jones is in the back of this room and will be able to provide for a more correct update. But we scored 29 instead of achieving our 30. This year we're committing to a target of 33%. Okay, so it's just our way of measuring where do people sit in that continuum to dissatisfied, neutral, satisfied, very satisfied. And we've set a target that looks at the very satisfied, and that's what the 30% target was, and we got to 29 on it. Does that help? On an 8 out of 10
No, it does, and just a supplementary, Chair, it does. Using that particular scale, knowing that there is talk around getting rid of Auckland Transport, the morale at Auckland Transport, using that scale, what would that be? 5% or even less around possibly the press release? I just wanted to sort of, that may be a political question, Chair, so I just wanted to put it to you because I wanted to use that scale in regards to that, because it's just so important in regards to morale. That's the point I'm asking, that particular part. I'll be led by you, Chair, but I just wanted to sort of put that out there.
I mean, it's a fairly leading question, and you should know better from your days in the police about asking leading questions. But you don't have to ask, I mean, Dean, you don't have to answer that if you feel that it's, you know, puts you in a tricky situation.
I'll answer it this way. There are things we control and things we can't control, okay? My focus in this organisation is delivery against the things that we can control, okay? And if we get that right, then I think these other things will resolve themselves. But of course, you know, when there's a rail infrastructure failure or there is these other things happening, whether it's in the media or it's politically, you know, even the bill around dissolving, I'm not sure whether that's quite the right word, but the draft bill from Winston Peters and New Zealand First, of course that has effect on staff morale, and it also has effect on people's perceptions of an organisation that is actually doing well. So yes, it is in the mix, but I wouldn't want to put a percentage on it, but our focus is simply to deliver as superbly as we can. And if we get that right, then the other things will follow.
Yeah, Chair, I reserve my right to speak. Thank you.
Thanks, Alf, and thanks, Dean. Angela.
Thanks, Andy, Chair. Dean, congratulations on your permanent appointment. Further congratulations to you and your team on your results. Really well done. Thank you. A bouquet. Elected members' email that we use, I've been getting some really efficient responses and have been helpful. So that is being very helpful for me, actually. So a bouquet for the people that are working in there. I think it's usually just a few people that I get responses from, so they're doing a good job. My question is around GSI. Specifically, what we've been given previously is some pretty good evidence as to why we would use speed calming and specifically raised tables. We also have some pretty good results where DSI has been reduced where these have been implemented. And I'm wondering the flexibility that Auckland Transport might have now that there has been a change of policy, and I'll put it in the context of a project that is underway that is introducing new crossings on some pretty busy roads that do not have raised tables. I believe that Auckland Transport probably thinks that raised tables would be a better idea, but because the policy has changed, we're not going to use them. We're going to use other things like driver feedback signs and maybe AI intelligence. Do we have the flexibility, or is the policy changed from central government about no raised tables just mean no raised tables despite the evidence we have around it reducing DSI?
Good question as well. I think I've had two good questions from the left of the chamber. Sorry. This is going to be a long day. Sorry. From that side, sorry. That was terrible. Sorry.
You need some scripting for your answer.
No, that could get worse, so I won't. So my challenge to myself and to the Auckland Transport, thanks, I need water, the Auckland Transport team is we need to take a safe system approach. And so when we look at where we need traffic calming or there is an intervention required, the question is, what is the right intervention? And it's not always a raised pedestrian platform. It could be these other things. It could be a signalised pedestrian intersection. It could be your traditional zebra crossing, well lit. That could be, rather than a vertical device, it could be a horizontal one. How do you take people through? Or it could be a median, raised median curve. So the challenge is, what is the right thing to do given what the information is that we have, and then resolve how it's funded. So I've tried to differentiate funding from what the right thing to do is. Okay? What I think we got caught in before is that the funding policy that previously existed made it very easy to get money for raised pedestrian tables, and they weren't required in all instances, but the funding led you that way. So you will see a shift, but our commitment to delivering safe outcomes for users of the road network, including pedestrians and cyclists, but also drivers, remains exactly the same. So that's a principled answer to you, but it is how we have to approach it. And when it comes to local interventions like signalised intersections, or where it's safety related, raised pedestrian tables, we've set an internal expectation. There's got to be a safety case for it. The local board has to resolve or write to us and confirm they want it, and we need community support for it. We'll never get unanimous community support because there's always those for and against, like many projects. But if we've got those three things and it's able to be funded, then that's what we will do. We've got instances right now where we've got MPs from the coalition alongside local boards and communities advocating for raised pedestrian tables. So we know that people want this, and that's okay. That's good, and we will still do those interventions, but it's got to meet those criteria.
The project that I'm working on, the response was that it was about the policy. So I just hope that we're making the right decision in that particular instance. The second question I have is around the climate change and sustainability. I just wanted to get Auckland Transport's understanding. So what I've heard is that Auckland Transport believe that we are giving them too many confusing messages, and I can completely understand why. And that the TURP is an unfunded mandate. From my perspective, the TURP delivers on the outcomes of the Climate Action Plan, and the TURP is a directional document. How it is funded is through the LTP, the RLTP, ATAP, and other tools such as the Climate Action Targeted Rate. So the Climate Action Targeted Rate absolutely delivers on the TURP. In and of itself, it's not funded, but it tells us how we're going to get to those end games. How difficult is it for Auckland Transport to be able to get to the end of those aspirations, or those targets actually, when you get letters of expectation that are not aligned with that, and when you get a policy direction by central government that is not aligned with it either, and that you actually have to build an RLTP that meets the NZTA funding requirements, which is completely against what the TURP might deliver. So what I'm trying to get at is that the TURP offers direction how we get somewhere. In and of itself, it's not funded, because we have all these other tools that fund it.
Auckland Transport remains committed to decarbonising and reducing emissions. So that hasn't changed, and that's captured in the emission reduction plan at the government level, which is being revised, and our own transport emissions reduction plan. How we get there and how quickly we get there and the route that we take is in function of what is funded. So I think with that in mind, we can keep an aspiration as a direction, but if we've got this disconnect between our aspiration and what we're funding, then I think that's a question I need to push back to you as a council. I think you need to reflect on what is it that you actually want. How quickly do you want to get there? I think it is a discussion that we need to bring back to you and challenge the TURP settings and objectives and how you implement them. So I'm going to put it back to this chamber, and that would be a very important conversation for us to have in a leadership sense. I'm not resiling from what we're trying to achieve. I'm saying how you get there is a very important conversation that needs to be politically led. we will implement.
That is the absolutely right answer, that we need to be able to fund you to deliver through the LTP. But then the RLTP needs to be designed to deliver as well. It does come back to political decision making. If we question the TERP, then we need to go back and look at Te Tarakia Tawhiri. So we start right at the very top. It is a discussion we need to have, I agree with you.
Can I just add, so the timing pieces is important, and just a reminder for those that weren't around the table at the time, so TERP requires a 64% reduction in transport emissions in Auckland, including private motor vehicles, by 2030. And that, with the maths we did at the time, that would have required less cars on the road in 2030 than we had during the big COVID lockdown. So that's the size of the emission reduction we're talking. So you're then into a conversation around timing, what's the rate of, because we're committed to decarbonising our own fleet, but it's the real question is at what point do you reduce emissions from private motor vehicles? That's the nub of the conversation that needs to be had.
And I'm not sure which committee it comes back to, but I think we need to get it on the table and and just thrash it out, because this going around in circles.
And recognising you have significant influence over the rates funded proportion of that, and what you want to achieve as Auckland Council through Auckland Transport, and you have an influence relationship with the government in terms of what they prioritise from an investment perspective, and to me that's the tension that you're talking about. Yeah.
Thank you, Dean. Thank you, Mark.
Thanks, Shane.
Thank you, Chair. I'll start. I've got a couple of requests for information that might be memoable rather than right now, but just want an update on the national ticketing stuff. We haven't heard about that in a long time, and it's been in the news recently. And the other thing is just your comments around raised speed tables and that kind of checklist that people need to meet those criteria. That'd be great if we got that emailed, because I can send that through to communities and to local boards to say, look, this is what you have to do, because it's not necessarily entirely clear.
Yep, sure. So how about if we can either give an update on our own open loop contactless payments program and how that sits alongside and then integrates with NTS. We'll do that separately. It is a really important discussion. I'm pleased to say we're making very good progress in contactless payments. You will see that, no announcement today, but you will see that, okay, coming. And we'll talk about its relationship with NTS. In terms of criteria for raised pedestrian tables, they're very simply just what I've said, but I'll drop that note to you. And remember, there's a caveat in all of this. It might meet all those other tests, safety case, local board, community support, but we can only roll them out at the rate that we're funded to roll them out to. Yeah.
Couple more questions, Chair, thank you. The first one's I think, quite broad, but this meeting is the first since the NLTP announcement on Monday. I got asked by the media this morning, does the NLTP announced on Monday change our focus? So does it change AT's focus, and if so, how?
Yeah, I'm going to invite Mark to talk about that. Interesting question, does it change our focus? It doesn't change our direction. It will influence the speed that we get there, or the journey that we take, but the GPS is entirely at the discretion of the government of the day. They've chosen what they want taxpayer funds to contribute to, and Auckland Council, with that in mind now, Mark will talk about it in a little bit more detail, we have to then work with Auckland Council, in particular their CFO, and look at, well, what do we do with the rates component of that? Okay.
I might just provide you some very brief high-level comments. So just in terms of what is or isn't funded and what we're working through, and then I guess what we'd like to bring back in the conversation have with council. So first of all, PT services, 98% of our base services in the draft LTP are included, and critically that included a forward-looking view of CRL, go live. We added some services back late in the LTP. They're not currently funded. We need to do a separate funding application for that. renewals and maintenance around 80, or sort of, I think it's about 85% are funded, and bear in mind that's a far larger number than what's been in previous RLTPs over the next 3 years. So we're looking quite good in that space. The bit that then comes out, just for those that aren't familiar with the process, is then we submit an entire list, and it's hundreds of lines of projects into NZTA, and essentially they come back and go, is the project already committed for funding, tick, still gets money. They'll be eligible for funding subject to going through funding application and approval processes within NZTA. And then we get a list of not included in the NLTP, or they're just not on the list. So these are the things that won't be co-funded in the next 3 years. So they might still be in the 10-year period, but do they get funded in the next 3? We're going to do a piece of work in the next week to go through and say, well, what does that practically mean? And critically, what does that mean for the local share component? And then we want to come back to council and have a conversation with you about some choices around what should occur with that.
Yep.
I guess I don't want to preempt anything today, but we're critically doing that work. We'll engage with Ross Tucker and his team, Mayor's Office, etc., the likes of Luke, just trying to get our head around exactly what it means and bring you back some options, but we absolutely want to engage with you on it.
Thank you. I've got two more, Chair. Just noting the increase in threats and aggression across the network, can you talk us through bus driver de-escalation training? Does that happen in all cases, and how does that kind of work?
That is a classic Stacey question, but I feel confident enough to give you an answer. Yes, absolutely. Bus driver training and de-escalation does occur. Okay, now whether they, at a personal level under pressure, respond in the way that they're trained to is a separate issue. But the good news is that we have, when we look at violence, threats and aggression across our bus or our public transport network, that is going down, my last take on it, is going down where it's customer to driver. Where we've seen the spike is customer to customer. That's where the issue is.
Thanks. And my last one's a little bit more close to home. The $50 fare cap, absolute roaring success, had some fantastic feedback on that. I've been contacted by a few residents in Hobsonville Point questioning why their ferries are not included but their buses are. Did we price up including the Hobsonville ferry as part of that package, and is that an option in the future?
I'll have to come back to you on that one. I don't know the answer, sorry. Unless Mark does.
We've always excluded the ferries from any sort of fare cap just because they essentially cost more to run.
Yeah.
That's the...
Yep.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Thanks, Shane. Daniel online.
Yes, good afternoon, Dean and Mark. And Dean, congratulations on your appointment. A couple of questions from me following on from your earlier answers. So just going back to DSI, clearly there is a desire to address perceptions of safety near intersections for pedestrians and cyclists. But where your information that Auckland Transport is providing to local boards, and I'll come to the example in my ward shortly, indicates that actually there haven't been the statistics of incidents at intersections that would merit an intervention. I'm presuming that the evidence would lead Auckland Transport to take a position, even if there is a political desire, a desire from some people, whether they be residents or elected members, to push for an outcome which is different from where your evidence-based design would take you. You will have to stick to the evidence, I presume.
Good question, because we've discussed this before. Of course, we look backwards at what the history is at that location, but our design thing also requires us to look forward at what the changing use and volumes and nature of those locations are, intersections included. So it'll be a combination of both. It's not just, we don't need a whole lot of accidents to have happened to drive a change. We can be predictive based on what the change in use might be, so that we can avoid people being injured into the future. So it'll be both and, Councillor.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I cite the example of the Weymouth roundabout in my ward, where the information you provided to the local board as recently as yesterday was pretty clear in terms of the lack of data looking backwards there. But obviously Auckland Transport is proposing some measures which I presume are justified on your look forward, and that Auckland Transport is working on the basis of what it thinks is the right outcome, balancing out all expectations. So I might comment on that. We'll see how we go.
Okay.
But can I just move forward to, if I may, and possibly it's a question for you, Mark, at page 69 of my report, under issues and risks, it goes down to the fourth bullet point on funding. AT's key funding partners, Auckland Council and NZT, are under significant funding pressure. Obviously, the GPS and the NLTF made announcements. We've had announcements earlier this week, which are really declaratory for you. To the peer review, how quickly can Auckland Transport come back to Auckland Council now to say, actually, this is what we expect can be delivered through the NLTF, which we would consider to be a funded mandate. That's what we can confidently move forward on. All of the stuff beyond that is an aspiration which is not funded. And as part of that, can you then ask us to clarify the matter? Because I, like other people perhaps, are rather tired of this conversation whereby we aspire and we seek to send messages to you which are not funded, and I haven't seen a single transport project offered up around this table which is offered up as 100% council funded. If you don't have the funding through the NLTP, it seems to me that we really do need to go back now and rethink what is practical and what is aspirational but not funded. How quickly can Auckland Transport provide that information? Because I think the Mayor does need to give clarity in his direction setting for the forthcoming annual plan.
I'd say a matter of weeks. We're going back to the Auckland Transport Board next week with an initial view of just what it means in the sort of gap, and we're inviting some council staff into that meeting. It's a bit of a discussion workshop with NZTA as well. But off the back of that, what we want to do is work up some options. And if I give you a specific example, some of the network productivity improvement type initiatives that were sitting, and I know these are close to the Mayor's heart, sitting inside of some of our plans in the long-term plan, they might not receive co-funding, but there may be some surplus local share left over from renewals because they're going to be funded 85%, which there may be a choice at this table to actually reallocate that local share into some of those network productivity improvement initiatives. They're the kind of things we want to bring back as trade-offs, because there's choices around that local share, whether it gets spent in the next 3 years or deferred out to the right. But we want to come back and have that meaningful, engaged conversation I'd say in the next month. The thing we haven't landed yet is just when might be an appropriate time. I think it would be through this committee, through a workshop, but we just need to look at some timing on that. But we actually want to lean in and give councillors, the opportunity to have a say in that. Like, if I just give you one other real practical example of something that would really value the councillors' input on road safety, education. So it's not funded in the GPS, but so there'd be a choice around to what extent local share is still spent on providing safety education for teaching kids how to ride bikes. Is that something we'd want to still fund or not? They're the kind of gnarly conversations, but we'd like to come back and have them with you.
Thank you very much, Chair. I reserve my right to speak.
Thanks, Daniel. Wayne?
Got a few questions. We had a presentation at our last meeting by Mike Rudge, Intelligent Transport Systems New Zealand, and it was very compelling as it goes to improving the efficiency of the network, that goes to, frankly, the efficiency of mobility of everything. I've been in cities and experienced this directly, and I know what it's like. So my question goes like this: is it possible to bring a report to us that perhaps outlines a number of the issues, identifies a number of challenges. For example, my understanding is that the New Zealand strategy around ITS ran out in 2018. Now, that's not directly Auckland Transport's responsibility, but there are issues there. Equally, the standards that we've got in New Zealand really don't mesh with overseas standards, so there are barriers to adoption. There are a number of issues. NZTA is just, I think, losing its two key people in this area. That, again, that's not something that we can do anything about, but it may mean that we need to up the game. And I'm just mindful that most of our system is based on SCATs, almost exclusively. We know there are difficulties moving from that, and there may be risks that ATA is concerned about, but at least it would be useful to bite off some locations where you've got multiple intersections and an opportunity to make a change. So my first question is around bringing something back to us that's really driving things in this area so that we're, you know, ahead of the game as best we can be.
Thank you for that. And I know that you've been consistently challenging us in that area. I'm pleased to confirm a few things. We are working with Mike Rush and will continue to do so. We had a very interesting and informative workshop with our board a couple of weeks ago looking at particularly the use of artificial intelligence across our networks. We agreed out of that we would like to bring a short version of that into this meeting to talk about what are the things that we're thinking about, what are we seeing, and we've got a partnership with HP and Microsoft for some of the work that we do. It's not the only partnership we have, and we've got a very interesting trial that we have got them looking at designing out and implementing for Custom Street where we have significant congestion issues. And we thought it might be really useful to share that with you. In terms of updated digital and ITS strategy work, that is absolutely in our work plan and expectation that we need to deliver on over this year. And we will bring that to you. In general terms, Auckland Transport, though, whether we've updated things or not, is pushing really usefully how we think about digital and technology, and I think we've got good partners in the room to help us go there. And a real working example around digital is our contactless payment systems approach. You know, we will bring that to the people of Auckland after about 18 months of design and build, very cost effectively, and that will bring us into the league where we expect to be alongside Sydney and Brisbane and Melbourne and London and these other places. So that is a working example of all the talk. Okay, so look, always a lot to go on this one too, but that's some feedback, and we'll bring something to this committee this year on how we're using technology to enhance, cost effectively I might add, enhance how we move.
The other question I've got just goes to time of use charging or congestion charging alike. I would suggest, and I think it's highly likely that it'll be driven by the government, that before we have the adoption of that or anything close to it, we'll probably have a charge per kilometre. That's fundamental because the revenue from fuel tax is in active decline as we get the uptake of EVs. And that change will no doubt impact driver behaviour, conceivably quite considerably. So my question is, doesn't it make sense to start modelling that and looking at that, because it could well be an earlier implementation than congestion charging, or time of use, which might be an overlay. And my other question that goes to time of use charging is like this: against a background where we don't have adequate public transport delivery in Auckland, will not the adoption of something like that really just spread the peak because we won't get significant numbers of people opting out of vehicles because the PT offering's not there. So we just, in many respects, just worsen the problem. So a couple of related questions. The first one is around whether you're actively looking at the impact of a charge per kilometre, and other countries are moving on that at speed, and secondly, how that impacts on time of use charging and what you might consider there.
So the first one on road user charges, no, we're not actively looking at the cost per kilometre. That's a role for the government, and we will leave it with the government to resolve that, what they want to do. But yes, there's a whole lot of discussion around shifting from applying just a diesel to all of the fleet, and whether it can also be an e-ruck. So the right policy work is taking place. That will continue. The degree to which it overlaps with time of use charging, that will be considered. But look, there is a political reference group on time of use charging. There is some really significant modelling that's been occurring around that. I think we've got a really informed base of knowledge as it relates to time of use. But what is important right now is, whilst we continue to understand how it might apply in Auckland, the government's going through the process of developing its own legislation. It'll bring it to select committee, it'll be available for public submission, and it's their time to lead this, councillor, and it's our time to prepare so that we can make a quality submission and then be ready for implementation. So we're just in that space where the government's leading as they should.
The other question I've got is under climate change and sustainability, and I note that there's a business case that you're writing for electric vehicle projects, commercial model assessment and the like. Is it possible for us to have any oversight over what that's about? And if I just raise one particular issue, there is no question that the easiest thing that can happen through the adoption of intelligent electric vehicles, I mean, some of which have got, say, 9 cameras on board, is that you don't have the accidents. They largely don't occur, and that is the case with, the modern Teslas, for example. So if we're looking at a case for reducing, deaths and serious accidents and the like, there's going to be a fundamental shift in the future. So my question is just around this business case and whether it's possible to share what you're doing there, because there are going to be some pretty fundamental outcomes in the near term.
It is a business case we need to work up, but I think it's entirely appropriate. We'll come in and workshop it with councillors. So we'll work with the chair and Barry, and we'll arrange a time where we have that conversation, of course.
Okay, and the last question, Mr. Chair, is really just for confirmation. So we're going to be getting that report on the electric ferries and the cost overruns and the implications sometime in the near future?
I think we're targeting October.
Okay, that's great. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Julie?
Thanks very much. None of my colleagues have asked some of the questions I already had around race crossings, climate stuff, but I still have a couple more, so no worries. I was interested the threats and aggression stuff. I was interested. You said that that seems to be increasing in the passenger space. Did you feel there was any connection though between the trust and confidence issue in AT and some of that aggression that's not passenger to passenger? Do you feel like there might be a link there? Maybe it's something to think about and come back on, because people do see parking wardens in particular. But also bus drivers, train staff, they've got AT livery on them. And I just wondered if there might be a link there that,
There might be, and we've got instances where staff are identified as AT staff and they receive aggression.
Yeah.
But and that is a sad day. but equally sad, and by far the largest percentage, is are people out there taking their own anxiety or their own frustration, or it could be alcohol or drug related, whatever it is, they're taking it out on each other. There is racism out there. So look, there's other things going on that are driving that passenger, customer, but yep, we see it with AT staff as well. And I'm not here to, why that turns up in the way that it does, I'm not qualified because I haven't talked to the individuals, but my expectation of everybody is actually,
Thank you, driver.
that's not the way to behave.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. And my other question is, you've got a bit in there on the temporary traffic management plan work. We had a really good presentation on that some months back, and I'm starting to get quite a lot of questions about, what's happened and what's happening next. I think it'd be really good to start to tell that story. Perhaps maybe next month we need a bit more of an update, how that is all progressing, because it looks like it's going good places. But part of the problem we have is that most of the projects that are literally on the road now were not planned under the new structures that are coming through. So what's the plan around telling some of that good news? Because I think that would help with the trust and confidence stuff.
Agreed. So we will come back. We've got some great ideas, not only about how we want to tell Aucklanders what's happening, but we've got some really good ideas about how much further we can go to reduce the impact of temporary work, whether it's planned or unplanned, whether it's us or a utility or a developer in the road space, and how we can shift this further again using non-legislative tools. So look, there is more to come on this. We're doing some really good thinking. I'm really pleased, but it does require a significant amount of change. So I would welcome the opportunity at the right time to come back and share more, but I'm as frustrated as I am by the number of cones they've got to roll. But having said that, I'd like to see less of them when it matters for people that need to move through a corridor. So, yeah.
Yeah, there's a balance to be struck, right? And I think one of the conversations we need to be having with the community really transparently is the trade-offs. And so, for example, we can close the whole road and do the works a lot faster, but then you won't be able to, get through that road at all for a 6-week period, as opposed to a stop-go that means you can get through, but it takes us longer. Those kinds of trade-off conversations, I think we need to get better at having those talks.
And maybe a discussion with the community around, actually, we can do this over 3 nights.
Yeah, night works is a really big one that's coming up.
So we want to have that conversation with you, because we will need your support if we're going to make the change, reduce the impact.
Yep.
But the impact will play out in a slightly different way. Yeah.
Great. Good to hear. Thank you.
Richard?
Kia ora, thanks. Chair, first of all, just on the public transport figures, it does seem obvious because there's been so much disruption, but it's on the train network is where we're lagging still. How will we, obviously horrible incident this week, that doesn't count, but what are we doing in that space? How can we get the lag of the whole public transport figure that is largely being dominated by rail? How can we get that back? Are we working with Kiwi Rail hand in hand every day?
Well, that's a millions of dollars question, and it's occupying a lot of conversation. We are very committed, as is Kiwi Rail, to get this more right. The government have supported the key issue with the railway network. It's the challenge on service delivery is that the infrastructure, including signals, hasn't been able to support the use. So we need to get the infrastructure backlog resolved so we get the rail system up to a steady state. There's a lot of effort going in to get that in place and get the services back to where they need to be, service frequency, reliability, punctuality back in time for CRL go live, okay? And we will be talking more about that once we've resolved and understood what needs to happen on the rail network between now and that go live period. So look, if we can be assured that we're working very closely between the government, council and political leadership, between ourselves and Kiwi Rail, we've got CRL in mind. It is a really significant effort. We do know that our patronage on rail is about 60 to 70% of what it was. It's likely to stay that way until we kick into post-CRL, but then we expect it to really kick on and grow. So there's some pain to go through still, but I believe we've got the right ingredients and the right commitment in the room. We've just got a bit more time needed.
Thank you. On the, and it will just be quick, so the Paris Agreement that was signed up by the last national government and then re-signed up by this national government is an unfunded mandate. It's a target, and then successive governments fund it every year to try and reach the target. Can we please, you know, maybe, obviously it means coming back, but I constantly hear from AT, from others, from certain people who think that climate denial is sexy now, and that's not from AT, but that we have to fully fund a target that's 2030 and 2050. You know, is that your, as a CEO, who you've got climate disclosures legally binding by this government too now, that we all have to do you see the TERP and Te Tarakia Tāwhiri, which are just portions of the Paris Agreement, scientifically based? We don't fund anything we do full. The FDS, the future development, you know, we don't fund everything 100%. We work towards the goal over time. I just want to know where that's getting confused, that we suddenly have to fully fund everything.
So look, yeah, if I need to clarify the comment ago before, I'm happy to do so. We're not confused about the direction.
Okay.
That's the first answer. The second answer, which is entirely consistent with the first one, is that is our ability to fund getting to that destination varies. The speed with which we get, the route we take will vary. But everything that we do, we have that outcome in mind. So it's the materials we use in the road when we're constructing it. It's the vehicles with a low emission or no emission that we purchase. It's the public transport outcome that we're looking to deliver as we make that mode a choice, a preferred choice. It's efficiency down the corridor so that we haven't got cars constantly stopping and sitting there, whether it's temporary traffic work or whether it's intersections that don't operate efficiently. So everything we're doing points in that direction alongside the other things that you've asked us to consider. So no change in direction. All these things add in.
And then the other question is, so obviously the Minister for Transport has said not $1 more on a speed hump, but you've said that's not actually accurate. And the change from a 4.1% spend on walking and cycling, which includes footpaths, which we all use, maintenance and new footpaths, down to 1 point, whatever it is. How do you see that affecting what we can do? Because you well know, you live in the same community as I, one of the main complaints I get is footpaths. You know, upgrade footpaths. So, yep, the cycling seems to trigger people, and that's really important to a lot of people, but footpaths are kind of less political. How are we going to afford the aspirations of Aucklanders when the budget is so dramatically reduced?
Without putting words in the government's mouth, they have said through the National Land Transport Fund what they want the taxpayer dollar to go towards. And so they've been clear on that, and they've put it in some areas and taken it away from others. Around cycling and active modes, around public transport infrastructure will be other examples, low cost, low risk. So they have prioritised what they want the taxpayer dollar to go in. The question for this council is, what do you prioritise your local share to go in? And they're not saying, Auckland Council, you can't spend your money in any particular way you want to. They're saying you'll just need to make those choices, 50-50 or 100% in other areas. So I think it comes down to the local share component, and once again, if something was previously relied on as 50-50 funding and now you have to fund it 50%, then you're going to ostensibly only be able to do half of it. It'll take you longer to achieve. So I think that's the crunchy conversation we will go through once we've got all our thinking around the impact of the NLTP on the funding of the Auckland Transport Program.
Okay, and last question, sorry, Chair. On the safety, so this is a pretty amazing figure, obviously terrible for those who lost their lives and were seriously injured, but to be that far under what we thought we might be at, with the reversals, the blanket reversals that are going to cost us a lot of money, as an entity, are you going to be able to push back and say, look, we're not going to reverse this because we've proved it's saving lives? Because who is it us, is it you, is it the minister that falls down to if we remove or reverse all of those speeds and suddenly people start getting hurt and die at a higher rate? Because I'm still confused at whose decision it is to reverse all of that.
This is a tough space, Councillor. I'm not going to pretend I can answer it. But the government of the day sets the speed rule. They will require us to review those speed rules. And they've set out the criteria by which that review and engagement with communities has to occur. And if this council wants to hold a particular, we'll engage as per the speed rule, of course. And between ourselves and this council, if you've got a view that you want to hold to, then that has to be a really, really important part of it. We remain committed, though, that we want to see that death and serious injury number continue to drop, and we know that speed is a factor. So it is a challenging area. There's going to be a change, but we will look to mitigate that change as much as possible and enhance safety wherever we can.
I think 18 votes to 3 is pretty clear that we do want you to hold the line on that. But anyway,
Yeah,
thank you, Chair.
I'm not sorry, Councillor. I'm not questioning you holding a line. I'm saying we've got a new set of rules coming in, and we're going to have to work through that with communities. But I was pleased that the Road Transport Committee also approved submission to the Director General of Land Transport for reducing speeds in a whole range of areas across Auckland, where it aligns with this government's policy position, and that's evidence of our commitment to achieving those outcomes.
Thank you. Desley?
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Dean. Look, I've got quite a specific question, and to be fair, it's with Stacey not here, it's a bit tricky. But I think a number of councillors have mentioned to you the concern that's happening in the crime space with either, as you say, passenger to passenger, whether it's on public transport or on the footpath. And I've had quite a lot happening to those who live, and their young students who live in my ward. There has been a bit of concern that Auckland Transport aren't handing CCTV to police as quickly as they could. And I just wondered if you could give me any update around any changes in direction that you're now giving your team to release that footage as soon as possible. And a follow-up is, are you actually talking to police and ensuring that you're all joined up about what to do in this space when alleged perpetrators use public transport to escape?
Great question, and Stacey would do a better job than me, no question, but I have been talking with her a lot about this issue because it's close to our hearts. A couple of responses. The police, of course, have access to our CCTV, but they have to come through a specific channel to do so. And whenever they do that, we release it. If there is an issue about releasing it, then they're, of course, welcome to contact me if there's some frustration because it hasn't arrived in timely fashion, because that might happen from time to time, but that is the exception, not the rule. And the police are very clear on that, and we work very cooperatively with them.
Sorry, can I just interrupt you there? So what is it? So when they ask, how long does it take you to get it to them?
I don't know off
Right.
top of my head, but I can come back to you and confirm.
Yeah, because that's the concern, I think. The victims are desperate for police to get the footage, and there appears to be quite a long delay, like weeks.
Okay, well, I don't want that either. So there'll be a level of service agreement in there, and let me find out. But if we've, my invitation to you and others, if you're seeing something that's not making sense, usually it's not, please let me or Stacey know in this case. The second point is how do we work with these communities to help support better resolution of crime and violence, threat and aggression in public space, of which transport consumes a lot. There's some really great work happening with Councillor Filipaina out in the south. We're working with police, church groups, community groups, youth workers, Auckland Transport and important others to take a community-based approach. We will take that and replicate that across Auckland. We are turning up at MP-led and council-led community events to talk about it, what our roles are, how we might contribute. The constant challenge, and I have this conversation a lot, is we are here to support safer outcomes, but this is a societal issue that's turning up and behaving in a particular way in public space. We want to be part of the solution. We're helping facilitate that. But we need not you specifically, but we need to help people in this room to be advocates for how we live a little bit more in harmony and a little bit less aggression. There are issues in homes, drugs, alcohol, all of these things occurring that are affecting how people behave and act out. So we're very aware of it. We want to do as much as we can. Absolutely committed.
Okay, any further questions? Just apologies, Dean, if you did cover off on it before, but just those points that were raised by Claire in the report in regards to the not meeting the DIA. Did you cover that off before?
No, I didn't. Thanks for checking in with me. So, look, the only the comment that I want to make at the macro level is that we have our statement of intent, but we also have these DIA and long-term plan measures. The DIA measures are generally speaking national measures. They just want to see what is happening across the system, the transport system, and the long-term plan measures are set every 3 years. So the last lot was set in 21, and we've just reset them for 24 going forward. So long-term plan measures, DIA measures, SOI measures don't always equal each other because they're set in different ways and looking to achieve different understandings. In terms of where we've not achieved some of those DIA measures, I do have a few notes here that I want to touch on. Just want me to quickly flick through them? Would that be helpful? So we've got one here around percentage of signalised intersections in urban centres where pedestrian delays are reduced during the interpeak. So we have been looking to do that, but we haven't quite achieved that measure, and you'll see that there. But the interesting thing is that we're competing with productivity through the corridor from a vehicle transport perspective with reducing the time delay for pedestrians crossing it. The average time between signals on many of our intersections 42 to 45 seconds. Our target's 40. So we have missed it, but we've got dual use there, and we're looking to best manage that. But that remains a focus, and we will get closer to it. There's another one around road maintenance standards and ride quality or smooth travel exposure. This is that smooth travel exposure measure is generally driven by deterioration of the road network with increased traffic and lack of maintenance. So yes, we did miss it, but I think we will get back there now that we've got more funding to do resurfacing and resealing. So I expect an improvement there. Then we've got another one around the percentage of sealed local road network that is resurfaced. I don't want to blame funding again, but we have more funding now and we are delivering on that, and I expect that metric to improve. So that's a good result, and grateful for your support. There's another one around proportion of road assets in acceptable condition. It's interesting, we were fine with respect to the target, and then they changed the way that we measure it, and now we're not. That doesn't mean to say the issue has gone away, it just means that maybe we've got a better view of road condition. And so our commitment remains, we need to address that, okay? But under the new measure, it's giving us a low result. It's basically dropped 20 percentage points between one year and the other, 23 to 24. And I think those were the key ones. So look, that's a bit of feedback. I'm not trying to absolve us. We need to focus, but there's some reasons for where we're at, and we're working on them.
Excellent. Oh, thank you, team. You can step back and we can have a discussion. So there's a couple who have reserved their rights. So Alf.
Thank you, Chair. I was going to have a long talk about morale and how that would affect outputs, inputs, etc. from Auckland Transport. But because this report is a very positive one, I'm going to stay away from this. I want to acknowledge, firstly, the CEO of Auckland Transport. I remember when Dean resigned from Auckland Council in May of 2019 as the Chief Operating Officer, and I thought that was the last time I would see Dean in any capacity relating to Auckland Council. But he came back, and I was pleased that he came back as the interim chair and now confirmed by the Auckland Transport Board as the CEO of Auckland Transport. His work while he was here at Auckland Council for 5.5 years was just awesome to see the effect that he had at Auckland Council. And that, I believe, is reflected in this report, but also it's reflected on the staff at Auckland Transport. And I want to acknowledge the staff for all the work that they have. I mean, now that the chair is in the seat where he is, and Councillor Williamson is on there with Councillor Darby, I look forward to even more positive reports around Auckland Transport. There are some issues that need to be addressed, but I think that now we've confirmed the CEO, now that the staff are humming as far as I'm concerned in relation to this fourth quarter, I look forward to the existence of Auckland Transport. I look forward to all the work that they are currently doing in South, but also across Tāmaki Makaurau. To you, Dean, and to your staff, thank you so much. Kia ora, thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Alf. Ken.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to lead on in somewhat of the same vein as the last thing I commented on. It's all very good to have these discussions around this table, but it is not getting to the ground the same. Going back to when I asked about the funding of the road reserves, you know, the issue is that there's people that are stuck in limbo, not being able to do anything because Auckland Transport isn't acting in their area. And that locks the people who are trapped behind that activity into going nowhere, and they've been there for 18 months. I heard us talk about road closures to speed up the job. There's evidence all over Auckland that the road closures are not speeding up the jobs, and I won't go into ones in my local area, Mr. Chair, because you told me I can't, but I have evidence of it. And so I just want to see how I haven't had it explained to me yet, and I haven't had it shown to me yet, how what I'm encountering around this table actually makes a difference on the road. And I'd like people to please show me that, and then I'll know why I'm wrong or it's wrong. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. Julie.
Thank you. I guess just following on from that, it would be really useful to have some case studies of how things have worked better, how things have been changed. And I can think of a few, but they're local examples, so I won't go into that because that would be weedy of me.
Really bad.
Weedy and wheelie, yes. What I wanted to point to, though, was the turnaround in the capital projects delivery. And this is something when Dean came on board, Having been in local board land when Dean managed quite a significant turnaround in the capital project delivery for Parks Community, what we now know as Parks Community Facilities, I was really hoping that he would be able to work his magic here with AT, and really glad to see that that's been the case. So I wanted to acknowledge that, because that kind of been an easy boat to turn, to mix all my metaphors up. I also just wanted to give a little shout out for the humble road cone. What is a road cone? It is a sign that we are making things better, and while we are doing that, we're keeping people safe. Sometimes in some places, maybe we have too many, but at its root, that's what a road cone is for. It's a sign of good things to come and keeping other people safe while we do it. So, kia kaha road cones.
What about when it's in the bush, chucked in the bush and in the gutters? And in
Well, that's obviously illegal
naturalist.
dumping.
Wayne?
Or when the work's not happening, but the cone's still there.
Get this meeting under control.
So, a couple of things. Commendations to Dean and his team for their report. I didn't mention it by way of a question, but I'm assuming that Auckland Transport will be mounting a localised campaign to lift the patronage of the Gulf Harbour Ferry now that the services are back there. So there's real scope around that. I'm doing my bit as best I can. The other observation that I just want to make, Mr. Chair, by way of comment, is increasingly we're going to be overtaken by technology, by the adoption of electric vehicles. Teslas with nine cameras, they don't have any accidents, virtually zero. So this is the future that is imminent. And this goes to an increasing number of cars that are picking up on technology. The cost of electric vehicles is dropping dramatically through competition from China. And if there's anything that's going to see a reduction in emissions, that's going to be it. And it's going to be driven by price, because it's just so much cheaper than anything else, and these things don't really cost much to run. So the real concern that I've got, Mr. Chair, is that we get behind examining intelligent transport technology, that we start modelling these things because they are imminent, and forecasters like Tony Sieber, for example, have said that this is a change akin to the shift from horse and cart to internal combustion engine, and it's imminent. And we should really be updating ourselves on that and taking it into account in terms of cost effectiveness and the like, because a number of projects that we're embarking on may not be required to the extent that we're thinking they are.
Thank you, Wayne. Shane?
Thank you. Look, I'll be brief, but I just wanted to take the opportunity to draw my colleagues' attention to some data that's come out recently, because we've talked about the TERP around here today and climate emissions issues for transport and how important it is to cut them down, and we're all assuring each other that that's still very, very important, even though the latest announcements seemingly prove otherwise. For annual market share of new car registrations in New Zealand, electric or plug-in hybrid vehicles have gone from 20% in 2022, 27% in 2023, to 9% this year. 9%. So we talk here about how important it all is, but in the real world, where things like removing clean car subsidies and government changes and our inactions as well have real consequences out there. The consequences are the new cars of today that we're importing, ICE vehicles, will be the used cars of tomorrow, the dirty ones. For years, people in the industry and outside of it have said that New Zealand will become the dumping ground for ICE vehicles, and it is happening now. So we have to fix it, we have to change it, and we have to really stand up when plans are announced that actually make the problem worse. We need to lead for our city on this, and I just want to remind you guys all of that. The data is there, it's all very clear, and just bring it up. Where is it? Here we go. evdb.nz/ev-stats. I can send that link around, but that's got it all there, and we're failing. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Shane. Richard?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, just pretty big to have all those SOI measures met, and one very close. It has been a huge overhaul for Auckland Transport, losing 150 staff in the last year and having some pretty significant changes. So it has been tough for the teams there. I do, and I will, much to the chair's, but I can't see him because of the light behind him, so can't see if he's frowning or not. But I will just mention a few quick local examples of how it works on the ground, Councillor Turner. The 94, which is a new frequent route funded partially by the climate targeted rate, that rolled out a couple of weeks ago, promoted really well. We're getting an extra 400 trips per day on that now. It's a frequent route, and that's only with 2 months in. A significant Birkenhead to Takapuna across town route, which is fantastic. Two more little examples. There is a lighting project happening in Birkenhead at the moment. The team prepared the TMP thinking that, not realising half the suburb goes round a different way at peak than they do in the morning, the afternoon than the morning. That evening they changed the whole TMP and they are not working in peak. It will take the project a little longer, but actually overnight the town centre, the residents and the community are really impressed that AT, listening to myself and the local board chair and obviously the actions on the ground, they changed the whole process and the contractors to make sure that there was not as extreme disruption as there was on the Monday. Another one, we had a renewal project happening near our Cody Glen walkway, treetop walkway. It was looking fantastic. I went down with a couple of AT people and said, could you please do these little extra bits? They didn't have budget for it. They rang around and said, look, we've got the TMP here. We're using all these costs anyway. We'll do these little additional bits to make the community happy and reduce, and the community are stoked. So sometimes it's just about relationships. Sometimes it's just about making sure you are aware what's going on, and AT will do their best to flip it around, but other times they will say, no, this is a massive project that needs to be done and it will be disruptive, and it's up to us to try and back them up. So they don't get everything right, neither do we, but I think just those three little local examples that recently, real big positive change for community sort of overnight. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. No other comments, so I'll just finish up with a very quick comment-ish. And that I guess is, you know, when I read this report, I think I'd read it before somewhere else, but it's an exceptional report when you think about how far back Auckland Transport are coming from in terms of where things have been. And I asked Dean the other day, and I didn't ask him to repeat them again, but I said, when was the last time we did 99% capital delivery? Where had we come from in terms of that public perception rating? And, you know, I know that we were a long way behind on both of those, and we've got up to a point that, you know, is pretty good reading, and I thought it was a great report. And so I just want to acknowledge the leadership team who have had to go through their own restructure, the teams below them that have had to go through more restructures to try and achieve what we are telling them they must achieve, and yet we still kick them when we can, and that's unfortunate, but that's the nature of the beast, and just as we get kicked. And so, but I want to just acknowledge that. Obviously, no one has made mention of the outstanding board that has existed up until last week, but who obviously drive the governance and stuff. But the fact in that is that the current board of Auckland Transport has been appointed by this council. Nobody else. With Mark Darrow going, there is no one left on that board that existed pre the 2022 election. And so we have appointed the people who are running and directing and governing Auckland Transport. And so if we're going to have a dig at Auckland Transport, we have a dig at ourselves first, because we're the people that have put the people there that are governing that organisation. So again, I think it's a, you know, we've got a lot of work to do, and Auckland Transport understands where they still need to do work on, and there's no harm in us continually reminding them, because we get reminded as politicians all the time. But I think we also have to acknowledge that they understand that and are trying incredibly hard to reach that. And when we lead the rhetoric against Auckland Transport, it's not surprising sometimes that we get the result that we are trying to tell our public who listen to us, well, this is what we are seeing, and they will believe that. So, you know, potentially it needs a little bit of a change in the rhetoric that we lead as, I guess, community leaders. So, well done. You know, it's not perfect, but it's a damn sight better than it has been. So, congratulations to Auckland Transport. So, it's been moved and seconded, and so we'll just put that. All those in favour say aye, and against, carried. Thank you. Right, the next